Welcome back.
Cold beer, creepy stories. What gets better? Not much.
I love a good beer while talking scary stories in the middle of the night. Because they don't know when we're recording. We probably record
They
at
have
4
no
a.m.
idea. It's dark out, folks.
Yeah.
We set an alarm for early in the AM to talk about this shit.
Yeah. I looked outside, saw a shadow. Could have been a pterodactyl.
Yeah, basically. What are you drinking, Khalid?
Space Debris from Epic Brewing. 6.2% alcohol.
Space Debris, great. I'm drinking Cosmic Dissonance from Mother Earth Brew Co.
Oh, we went with a space theme. That's kind of interesting.
Too bad we're not talking about space today. We really missed the fucking mark on that one, didn't we?
So, Britain, it's getting a little bit warmer, you know? I like going outside a little bit, and I've been getting that itch to go camping. And so I decided to pick the topic tonight for 411 disappearances.
Hey, we've done those before. 411 disappearances. Some people enter and they never come back.
Yeah. I just think it would be really, it's one thing that I do worry about, going into the woods and then just disappearing without a trace. What happened? Nobody knows.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess kind of sticking to the space theme, I guess one of the topics has been brought up of aliens, right? Alien abductions. It's kind of rooted in.
They abduct you. But instead of just probing you, they probe you the hard way and you don't come back.
Okay. I don't know what you want me to say to that one, but probe you the hard way, you never come back. Okay. Imagine hiking in a sprawling national park when someone in your group vanishes without a trace. No sounds of a struggle, no tracks leading away, just silence and unanswered questions. This chilling scenario lies at the heart of the missing 411 phenomenon. Missing 411 is a term coined by researcher and former detective David Paulides to describe a pattern of mysterious disappearances in North America's wilderness, especially in national parks. I still think it's really crazy that you and I have met David Paulides. I think it's even crazier that we stood in front of him for like 30 minutes before realizing he was behind us, just sitting there.
Yeah, that was cool. Back in whatever backwoods city we were in. What was it? I don't remember.
Hang on. I have the little fucking thing.
He was the best speaker there by far. Like 100%.
Where the fuck was it? Oh, hang on. Still got the little pamphlet here. Can you believe it? Yeah, Vernal. Yeah. It was in Vernal.
Yeah. Yeah. Where my ancestors are from, man.
I bet. But yeah, no, hands down, he was the best speaker there. Like, I just got pompous douchebag vibes from the Bigfoot guy. Like, talking the whole time about yelling at his crew, like, "Oh, you're supposed to watch me the entire time." I was just like
him,
douchebag.
But I want to just go, boo,
boo.
Where's David Paulides?
I know that you know that I know that you know
God.
That Bigfoot fucked a pterodactyl.
And he started talking about giant worms.
All right. Back to the stories. Over years of investigation, Paulides has noticed unusual clusters of missing person cases that defied conventional explanations. His work, spanning 9,000 hours of research over 4+ years, compiled hundreds of cases of people who vanished under baffling circumstances, sometimes even when they were mere feet away from friends or family. These are not the run-of-the-mill incidents of hikers getting lost or people willingly disappearing. These cases are about the unusual, Paulides notes. Victims range from young children to seasoned hunters and even the elderly. Often, no evidence is ever found despite massive search efforts. Not a footprint, not a scrap of clothing. In other instances, the clues that do turn up raise more questions than answers. Neatly removed shoes or bodies found in locations seemingly impossible for them to reach. As search and rescue teams exhaust every lead, families are left grasping for explanations. Some suspect kidnappings. Others whisper about forces far more outlandish. Tonight, we delve into some of the most notable missing 411 cases, each a haunting story of an individual who stepped into the wild and never came home. or was found under truly eerie conditions. As you listen, notice the patterns that emerge and ask yourself, what could connect these vanishings? A perfect storm or natural misfortune? A hidden serial predator stalking our parks? Or could it be something beyond our understanding, lurking in the remote corners of the wilderness? Our journey begins in the Great Smoky Mountains on a summer afternoon in 1969, when a young boy's playful hike turned into a lifetime of mystery.
The disappearance of Dennis Martin. A misty view of the Great Smoky Mountains where dense forests and hollows conceal their secrets. A bright red t-shirt darted between green rhododendrons on the Appalachian Trail. It was Father's Day weekend 1969, and 6-year-old Dennis Martin was playing in the highland meadow of Spence Field in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. The Martin family's annual camping trip had gone beautifully so far. Dennis, his older brother, and 2 other kids they met on the trail decided to surprise their parents with a playful prank. The boys would hide separately in the bushes, then jump out for a scare. Dennis's father watched with a smile as the children split up and crept into the woods. Moments later, the other boys leapt out laughing, but Dennis was nowhere to be seen. In the span of seconds, the forest had swallowed him whole. At first, his father thought his youngest son might be playing hide-and-seek a bit too well. But as minutes stretched on, panic set in. The family scoured the nearby trees, shouting Dennis's name. His father, William Martin, sprinted along the trails for nearly 2 miles, yelling into the void for his boy. There was no response, only the quiet hush of the Smokies. With daylight fading, Dennis's grandfather hurried off to get help, nearly 9 miles down to the ranger station at Cades Cove. Then, as if the mountains themselves conspired to hide the evidence, the sky opened up. A sudden thunderstorm unleashed 3 inches of rain in mere hours, washing out trails and obliterating footprints that might have been Dennis's. By nightfall, a chilling reality set in. A little boy was missing and utterly alone somewhere out there in the dark, in the rainy wilderness. Come first light, one of the largest search operations in national park history was underway. Park rangers, hikers, volunteers, eventually 1,400 people poured into an area over the next week. Green berets in fatigues mysteriously showed up to assist, adding a surreal twist in the eyes of onlookers. For days on end, searchers combed ridgelines, drained streams, and scanned from helicopters, refusing to leave any stone untouched. On June 20th, 1969, Dennis's 7th birthday, nearly 800 people were out searching, refusing to give up on the boy. Yet not a single clue was found. It was as if Dennis had vanished into thin air. An investigator later mused. Exhausted, rescuers shouted in frustration. Even the search dogs failed to pick up a scent. After over 13,000 man-hours of effort, hope began to wane. Then came a bizarre lead. A few miles to the west, on the afternoon Dennis disappeared, a tourist family from another part of the park reported something strange. Harold Key and his family, hiking in Cades Cove area, heard an enormous, sickening scream echo through the woods. Moments later, they spotted a wild-looking man hiding in the bushes, seemingly trying not to be seen. The scruffy stranger then quickly fled the area. The Keys didn't know about the missing boy at the time, but when they later heard, they reported what they'd seen. Could Dennis have been abducted by that man? Park officials were skeptical. The location was several miles from where Dennis vanished, but the timing and the scream were eerie. The FBI was alerted, and an intensive search of the area ensued as well, turning up nothing. Weeks and then months passed, with no signs of Dennis Martin. The mountain had taken him, and it wasn't giving him back. Years later, a ginseng hunter would stumble upon what he believed were the skeletal remains of a small child deep in the woods, roughly 3 miles downhill from Spencefield. For a moment, hope of closure flared, but by the time the man reported it, fearful of legal trouble for poaching ginseng, he delayed the reporting. A follow-up search could not relocate the bones. To this day, the fate of Dennis Martin is unsolved and continues to haunt the Great Smoky Mountains. Why is Dennis's case a hallmark of the 411 phenomenon? First, the speed and completeness of his disappearance is mind-boggling. One blink, and he was gone. Despite probably hundreds of people being in the park that weekend, not one saw a lone little boy wandering. Second, extensive searches found no evidence whatsoever. No clothing, tracks, or remains. And then there's the eerie clue of the scream in the stranger, a hint of potential foul play that raises goosebumps, yet ultimately leads nowhere. Over the years, theories have ranged from the mundane to the macabre. Some think Dennis got lost and succumbed to the elements or a bear attack. Others, including Dennis's own family, believe he was abducted that day, perhaps by someone hiding in the woods. A darker, local folklore even posits he could have fallen prey to feral people or cannibals allegedly roaming the Appalachian wilds.
Jesus.
An idea fueled by the uncanny sightings of the disheveled man and whispers of strange figures in the mountains. No evidence ever emerged to confirm such tales. The Smokies keep Dennis Martin's story secret, tucked among its shadowy hollows and mossy thickets. The only certainty is the enduring heartbreak of a family and a riddle that remains as thick as the fog on Spencefield at dusk. From the Smoky Mountains, our next story takes us to the rural Pacific Northwest in the 1950s, where another child wandered into the woods. But his story had a very different ending, one that is no less bewildering.
Which takes us to the miraculous survival of Keith Parkins, 1952. In April 1952, on a remote cattle ranch in Ritter, Oregon, 2-year-old Keith Parkins gave his family the scare of a lifetime. It was a chilly spring day in the rural ranchlands of eastern Oregon. Little Keith was playing with his brothers near their grandfather's barn, giggling as they chased around after a newborn calf. When the older boys trotted back for lunch, they assumed that Keith was right behind them, but he wasn't. Keith had toddled off on his own, perhaps following a butterfly or the family dog just a bit too far. In the blink of an eye, that the toddler had vanished into the vast expanse of sagebrush, hills, and woods surrounding the ranch. At first, his mother likely felt a familiar flash of annoyance, that momentary, "now where's he hiding?" that any parent of a curious toddler knows. But as minutes ticked by and Keith didn't respond to calls, annoyance gave way to dread. The family and neighbors quickly organized a search of the property. Dozens of local volunteers spread out, calling Keith's name over and over as the afternoon light waned. They found tiny footprints about 3 miles from the house, confirming the little boy had indeed wandered deep into the wilderness on his own. The prints meandered through rough country, crossing over hills and through creeks. Nightfall brought cold temperatures, and with them a vision no parent wants. Their 2-year-old, alone in the dark, likely terrified. Jesus, sipping on an Old English too, eh?
I forgot about that. Funny. Did I just naturally pick that up without thinking? I love me Old English.
You just see this big bottle come up. I'm like, that looks like an Old English. You bastard.
Yeah.
You classy bitch.
Bastard.
A full 19 hours after Keith went missing, in the 7 o'clock hour the next morning, a search party made a stunning discovery. In a remote area, roughly 8 miles from the ranch, as the crow flies, one of the teams spotted something on the ground. It was little Keith. He was face down in the snow, his tiny body motionless. Dude, as a parent, that's ridiculous. That'd be scary as shit. You
It hits you hard when you're a parent.
You see your kid face down in the snow. Like, I can't even imagine. Fearing the worst, they rushed to him and found, against all odds, Keith was alive. He was unconscious and suffering from hypothermia, but breathing. The tough little guy had somehow survived a night alone, with temperatures dropping to near freezing, wearing nothing but light clothing. He was bruised, with scratches on his face and arms, likely from brush and maybe an unfortunate tumble or two, but he was alive. Rescuers were astonished. A child that young would typically curl up and succumb to exposure in just a few hours under those conditions. But Keith held on. A private plane flew him to a hospital where he made a full recovery. Now, if this were simply a heartwarming tale of a child's survival, you might chalk it up to pure luck. But what cements Keith Parkins in the annals of missing 411 lore is the sheer distance and terrain that he covered. Investigators mapping the search later determined that Keith likely traveled over 12 miles on foot during those 19 hours. Think about that. A 2-year-old toddler, barely out of babyhood, somehow traversed mountainous, forested land, crossing fences, streams, and hills in the dark. In comparison, the average 2-year-old might manage a mile in a day, if you're lucky, and that's on severely flat ground. Yet Keith's footprints indicated a wandering, circuitous route that baffled everybody. He ascended ridges and descended gullies. One theory is that he might have been chasing something, perhaps an animal that he naively followed, or maybe he was simply disoriented and kept trudging in confusion. Keith himself, being only 2, had no memory of the ordeal, or at least none that he could articulate. When later asked what happened, he reportedly couldn't say. Perhaps mercifully, the trauma of that night didn't imprint on his mind. Some missing 411 enthusiasts point to Keith Parkins' case as an example of how strange these disappearances can be. If he hadn't been found alive, imagine the mystery. We'd know only that a toddler somehow ended up 8 miles away on a mountaintop with no explanation whatsoever. Skeptics note that maybe adrenaline or a survival instinct kicked in. Maybe Keith sleepwalked or just kept stumbling forward in a state of hypothermic delirium. Others aren't convinced it's that simple. Could a 2-year-old really keep moving that far instead of simply collapsing? It almost seemed as if something carried him, or perhaps he moved in a state of unconscious guidance.
You'd having a 2-year-old, like literally right now, there is just no way they would cover that distance.
No. I have my 3-year-old complains of playing like an entire soccer game of 30 minutes. Like, there's no way this kid is walking 8 miles. There's no way. There's just not.
Yeah.
Keith's grandfather later mused that it was a genuine miracle that the boy had survived. Miracle or not, the Parkins case highlights a common missing 411 element. A person, especially a child, ends up far beyond a distance they should ever cover on their own, often at a higher elevation or across difficult terrain. In Keith's case, we thankfully have a living witness, and even if he remembers nothing, it's a happy reunion. Yet the questions linger. How did he travel so far, and what kept him alive through that frigid night? Keith's rescuers found him lying peacefully, as if he was simply placed there, almost as if some gentle force watched over him in those dark hours. It's a mystery that, to this day, Keith, now an adult, carries with him, perhaps always wondering about those lost hours when the wilderness held him in its embrace.
This one is the vanishing of Jared Atadero. A crisp autumn morning, a babbling creek in the Colorado Rockies, and a little boy full of energy. It's a scene that should have ended with happy memories. Instead, it became one of the most puzzling and heartbreaking missing 411 cases. Jared was just 3 years old in October 1999, living with his father, Alan, and older sister in the mountains of Colorado. They ran a small resort in the Padre River Canyon. On October 2nd, 1999, a Christian singles hiking group staying at the resort offered to take Jared and his sister along on a short excursion to a nearby fish hatchery.
It would be a Christian singles hiking group.
What are you implying, Brendan? Believing it's safe, Alan agreed, but the group decided to also hike the Big South Trail in the Arapaho and Roosevelt National Forest, a rugged trail along the Padre River. As they walked, little Jared, energetic and curious, ran ahead of the group. This was a well-traveled trail, and the adults weren't far behind, but Jared was fast and excited. He chatted with some fishermen on the path, even asking them innocently if there were bears in the woods. Around a question that would later seem haunting. Somewhere around 11 a.m., as the trail climbed along steep canyon walls, Jared dashed around a bend out of sight. Moments later, when his father, who had joined by then, and the others came around that corner, Jared was gone. Imagine the sinking feeling. One moment you glimpse your child's bouncing form on the path ahead, the next the trail is empty. The group frantically called out to Jared. Perhaps he had just stepped off the riverside, or hidden behind a rock to tease them. But minutes of silence quickly spiraled into panic. Some hikers raced back down the trail, others fanned out off the trail into the woods. No sign of the boy. Search and rescue teams were alerted and mobilized within hours. They scoured through the area through the night and for days after. Tracking dogs picked up Jared's scent and followed it for about 3 miles. Intriguingly, detecting that another set of tracks, believed to be mountain lion prints, were parallel to Jared's. At one point, the tracks seemed to merge, and then Jared's little shoe prints vanished. That grim clue pointed to the possible lion attack, but no blood, drag marks, or remains were found at the time. Not a scream was heard by anyone. The search continued for 5 days, over 150 rugged squared miles. Nothing. It was as if the force had swallowed Jared, just as it had Dennis Martin 3 decades prior. For over 3 years, Jared's father lived in agonizing uncertainty. Then, in the spring of 2003, a break in the case occurred, not due to official efforts, but by pure chance. On a steep ski slope 500 feet above the trail where Jared was last seen, 2 hikers stumbled upon something startling: a tiny child's shoe and a tattered piece of clothing. They were Jared's. The search was back on. Investigators arrived and soon discovered more. Jared's fleece pullover jacket, his blue pants, and his Disney Tarzan sneakers carefully sheltered in the rocks. And then, nearby, they found the most devastating evidence: a toddler-sized human molar and a fragment of a skull. DNA tests later confirmed these were Jared's remains.
Ugh.
The location was, it's sad. It's sad because, we have kids. That's heartbreaking. But the location was astounding. Jared had somehow ended up over 3 miles from where he disappeared and climbed high up a mountainside that even skilled adults would find treacherous. How could a 3-year-old have managed that? The conditions of the found items only deepened the mystery. Jared's pants were inside out and had been turned inside out without any tearing, almost as if they were gently removed and flipped. The pants had no predatory damage, only fraying, that experts determined was from natural decomposition and nibbling by small rodents and birds taking fibers for nests. His jacket was largely intact, and one could still clearly read the logo. The shoes, remarkably, were in great condition with no scuffs or drag marks, to indicate they had been pulled off a struggling child's feet or hauled through rough terrain. In fact, the shoes looked almost new, as if they had not spent years exposed to harsh mountain weather. All of this was inconsistent with a typical mountain lion predation. A lion attacking a child would likely leave blood, tear marks, and scattered, chewed clothing. It would not take off a child's pants, turn them inside out, fold them, and set them down. Nor would a 35-pound child's sneakers likely stay so pristine if a big cat dragged them up a rocky slope. Yet the official stance was that the mountain lion probably took Jared, largely because there was no better explanation at hand. And indeed, Colorado is a mountain lion country, and one had been prowling in the area based on the tracks. But many, including Jared's father, Alan, had doubts. Big cat experts pointed out that evidence didn't quite fit a cougar's typical pattern. It was almost as if something or someone had carried Jared up that mountain and possibly kept him for some time. One chilling detail, forensic analysis suggested that Jared likely did not die on that first day. In fact, his death couldn't be pinpointed at all. He was officially listed as cause of death undetermined, but his father learned that when Jared's skull fragment was examined, there was no evidence of damage from teeth or crushing. Could he have survived for a time after going missing? Some stories in Missing 411 cases talk of victims being oddly preserved or alive for days before death, even as searches raged all around. It's haunting to think about. To this day, Jared's case is cold. If you ask the authorities, they lean toward the mountain lion theory, a tragic but not unthinkable accident of nature. Yet so many pieces feel off. Why did Jared leave the trail in the first place? How did he climb so high and fast? Why weren't there obvious signs of animal attack? And if not a cougar, then what? Some have whispered, could a human predator have snatched him? It's not easy. That trail was busy that day and nobody saw a stranger grab a child. Could Jared have been accidentally shot by a hunter and then hidden? No evidence of that either. The mountain kept its secrets. Jared's father ultimately channeled his grief into writing a book and advocating for search and rescue improvements, but he remained convinced that something doesn't add up in what happened to his son. The canyon where Jared was found is now etched with a sorrowful memory of a place that offered just enough clues to confirm a loss, but not enough to explain it. Our next case unfolds in the majestic wilderness of Yosemite National Park, a place of towering cliffs and whispering pines, where a young woman stepped away from her group for a moment and was never seen again.
Lost in Yosemite. The disappearance of Stacy Aras, 1981. High in the alpine meadows of Yosemite National Park, the summer of 1981 was filled with clear blue skies and the scents of wildflowers. On July 17, 1981, Stacy Ann Aras, a 14-year-old girl from Saratoga, California, was on a horseback riding trip with her father and 6 others in Yosemite's backcountry. They were an adventurous group, making a multi-day trek through the High Sierra camps, a series of semi-primitive cabin sites accessible only by trail. That afternoon, the party reached Sunrise High Sierra Camp, a rustic cluster of cabins perched at nearly 9,400 feet elevation, overlooking a serene alpine meadow and lake. It's really pretty up there. After hours in the saddle, everyone was ready to rest. Stacy, however, was brimming with youthful energy and not quite ready to call it a day. At around 3:30 p.m., Stacy freshened up from the ride, even changing from her riding clothes into a clean blouse and hiking boots, after her dad insisted she not go walking in sandals. She grabbed her Olympus camera. The stunning scenery was calling to her inner photographer. An older gentleman in their group, 71-year-old Gerald Stewart, offered to join her for a short stroll down to a nearby lake so she wouldn't be alone. The two walked a little way from the camp toward Sunrise Lake, just a quarter mile or so away. Partway there, Gerald started feeling tired due to the thin mountain air and altitude, and the fact that he was 71 years old. He sat down on a boulder to rest and told Stacy to go on ahead and enjoy the view. he'd wait right there for her. Stacy promised to be right back. She just wanted to snap a few photos of the lake. A wilderness guide working near the camp saw Stacy in that moment, a teen girl standing on a rock outcrop, camera in hand, gazing at the tranquil lake just 50 yards or so off the trail. That guide would be the last person ever to see Stacy Aras. After about 20 minutes, Gerald realized Stacy hadn't returned. Perhaps a mix of concern and annoyance pricked him. She had said only a few minutes. He stood up and slowly walked back to the camp, expecting to find Stacy there. But she wasn't. Alarm bells rang out. A healthy, happy teen doesn't just disappear on a sunny afternoon walk with people nearby. The father and other group members immediately began searching the short path to the lake and around its banks. They found nothing obvious, except possibly Stacy's camera lens cap on the trail. Reports differ, but one often cited details the discovery of a lens cap believed to be hers. As evening fell, with still no signs of Stacy, the park rangers were notified and a full search and rescue was launched. It was unimaginable. She had been so close by, within earshot of Gerald, and not far from camp at all. Over the next 9 days, more than 100 people, helicopters, horses, and dog teams scoured the high country around Sunrise Camp. They shouted her name across granite ridges and through stands of hemlock. They rappelled down nearby ravines and dived into the icy lake waters. But aside from that one lens cap, no trace of Stacy was ever found. It was as if she had just stepped through an invisible door in the wilderness. She found those wilderness stairs, man. Stacy's disappearance is often described as Yosemite's most perplexing missing person case. The location wasn't a treacherous off-trail abyss. It was a spot very close to a well-known camp, frequented by visitors. Stacy was young, but not a naive child. She was 14 and presumably sensible enough not to stray too far. The weather was clear, she was properly dressed, and daylight remained. If she had simply gotten lost or fallen, logic says eventually something would have been found. An article of clothing, her camera, something. But Yosemite kept her secret. This case hits so many missing 111... 111? Yikes. This case hits so many missing 411 eerie notes. She vanished almost in sight of others. In the time it took an older man to rest his legs. Search dogs inexplicably failed to track her scent. The dogs, according to some accounts, would circle and sit or lie down as if the trail just ended suddenly, offering no direction to follow. Stacy's father and the others must have been tormented. She was right there. How could she be gone? Some searchers speculated maybe she slipped into a patch of hidden marsh or fell into a crevice that was somehow missed. But after days of intensive searching, no body or clues turned up. As with all such cases, theories started to pour in. Animal attack? Unlikely. No signs of blood or struggle, and no mountain lions or bears were reported in the area at that time. Plus, attacks in Yosemite's crowded areas are exceedingly rare. Abduction? But who could have been lurking at nearly 10,000 feet elevation, far from any road, ready to snatch a girl in broad daylight with others nearby, and not leave a trace? It seems far-fetched, and rangers noted that the nearest road was over 4 miles away. A kidnapper would have to plan an incredibly complex escape on foot. Lost and died of exposure? Possibly Stacy wandered farther than intended, got turned around as dusk fell, and succumbed to the cold. But usually that leaves behind remains eventually found by hikers, and Sunrise Camp is a popular area. That wasn't Stacy's case. 40-plus years later, nothing has been found. Yosemite officials eventually closed the search, and the case remains open but cold. In a controversial twist, when researchers, including David Paulides, later filed Freedom of Information requests to get the park's records on Stacy's disappearance, the National Park Service was oddly reticent. They initially refused to release the case files, citing privacy, fueling conspiratorial whispers that perhaps there was more to Stacy's story that authorities didn't want to share. When some files were finally released after pressure, they contained no new revelations, just photos of the search and Stacy's missing poster, the same info that went public all along. For the Aris family, the pain is all too real and not paranormal at all. A teenage girl went on a vacation with her dad and never came home. The emptiness where answers should be is as vast as Yosemite's granite domes. The missing girl's case became a solemn legend in park circles, a reminder that even in a place as beautiful as Yosemite can harbor unspeakable mysteries.
All right, this one is called The Hunter Who Never Came Back, Thomas Messick Sr. Late autumn in upstate New York, Adirondack Mountains. The air is crisp, leaves have fallen, and the deer hunters move through the forest in blaze orange, seeking one last buck before winter. Thomas Messick Sr. was 82 years old, a lifelong hunter and Army veteran. Tough as nails despite his years. In November 2015, Tom joined a group of friends and family for their annual hunting trip, Adirondack Park, near Brant Lake, New York. On November 15, 2015, the party decided to try a new spot by Lily Pond in the Lake George Wild Forest area, a quiet backcountry area with logging roads, dense woods, and a few scattered ponds. Given Tom's age and recent eye injury that left him blind in one eye, the plan was for him to take a stationary position as a lookout, while the younger men did a dive, walking and pushing any deer towards the watchers. They placed Tom on a stump at the edge of the clearing about 40 yards from a dirt road. Armed with his rifle and a walkie-talkie, two other older hunters were positioned not far from him in a line. The understanding: sit tight, watch and listen, and regroup in an hour. When the drive ended around 3 p.m., the others circled back to meet Tom, but Tom was gone. At first, they thought he might have wandered a few yards into the trees to retrieve a downed deer or answer nature's call, but as they called out and heard nothing, concerns grew quickly. Tom was not the type to wander off. He had decades of woodcraft experience, and he knew to stay put. Moreover, he had a bad knee and typically moved slowly. He certainly couldn't have gone far in an hour. The men fired off a few gunshots, a universal signal to draw a lost hunter's attention, and expected Tom to radio back or come shuffling out of the brush. Silence. Only the wind through the bare branches replied. Puzzled and anxious, Tom's hunting party contacted forest rangers that evening. Thus began a massive search. Within 48 hours, over 300 people were combing the Adirondack wilderness for any sign of the missing 82-year-old. They scoured 29 square miles of woods, swamps, and rocky slopes over the following days. Searchers included state troopers, forest rangers, police canine units, and local volunteers, all coordinated in grid patterns. They even deployed divers to check nearby ponds and infrared-equipped helicopters to scan from above. Despite the extensive effort, not a single clue turned up. Tom Messick had vanished utterly, gun, walkie-talkie, and all. The ground searches found no tracks, no broken branches, no disturbed leaves. It was as if he had been plucked straight off the stump into thin air. Even the highly trained SAR dogs came up empty. Some handlers reported their dogs oddly turning silent or sitting down abruptly as Tom's scent just stopped at a point and went nowhere. A detail almost too strange to believe, yet consistent with other mysterious vanishings where canines can't pick up the trail. Friends who were there that day added an extra layer of strangeness. A couple of the hunters reported hearing an unidentified noise in the woods sometime around when Tom went missing. They described it as a peculiar sound, not quite an engine or a gunshot. something they couldn't quite explain, echoing through the trees. They thought little of it at the time, but in hindsight, it became one of those eerie footnotes. Did that sound have anything to do with Tom's disappearance? Tom Messick's case is a perfect missing 411 storm. He was an experienced outdoorsman who shouldn't have gotten lost so quickly, and the search effort was enormous and professional, yet found zero evidence. Moreover, Tom was elderly and had health limitations, one eye, bad hearing, heart issues, which typically make one think if he had fallen or gotten hurt nearby, he wouldn't be able to get far at all. And yet, extensive searches of the immediate area where he sat showed no signs of even a fall. No scuff marks where he might have tripped, no discarded gear or clothing. One of the only rational scenarios that he perhaps suffered is a sudden medical emergency and became disoriented. Still doesn't account for why nothing was found. If he had, say, a heart attack and wandered, they should have found his body within a couple hundred yards. They did not. The environment around Lily Pond, while wild, isn't an endless expanse of uncharted land. It's hemmed in by ridges, with some caves and old abandoned mines in the area. Early theories consider that maybe Tom fell into an unseen pit or mine shaft, but hundreds of searchers thoroughly checked those possibilities. Some even theorized a bear may have dragged him off, but black bears rarely, if ever, attack humans as prey, and certainly a struggle would have left evidence. Human abduction? Who would kidnap an 82-year-old in the middle of the remote woods, and how, without anyone hearing or the victim fighting back? I bet you would, Britain. Plus, by all accounts, no one else was around for miles. The forest is quiet about what happened to Tom. To this day, not a trace of him has been recovered. The official case remains open, with the New York State Police and forest rangers occasionally revisiting it. They consider it an open missing persons case, limited continuous search, meaning they'll still follow any new leads. Locals in the area were shaken. Two of Tom's friends who helped in the search died in the following year, never knowing what happened. Tom's wife and sons were left with only grief and imaginations of the possible grim ends. As time went on, online sleuths took interest. Some pointed out a bizarre coincidence. Another hunter, Fred Drum, vanished just 2 weeks prior about 40 miles away in New York. Similarly, an older man who went missing without a clue, though the case was more likely to a lost person scenario. Yet two hunters gone in the same region fueled whispers of a serial abductor or unknown predator in those mountains. In the absence of answers, theories run wild. Some missing 411 devotees suggest something paranormal. Could Tom have been snatched by a sudden vortex or even a UFO? That might sound outrageous, but when reality offers no crumb of comfort, the mind wanders to the extreme. We'll likely never know what befell Thomas Messick Sr. Did he quietly slip into death in a nook of the forest so well concealed that no searcher ever found him? Or did something unthinkable occur? The Adirondack holds the secret close, amidst the silent pines and lowly ponds, as one family still waits for the man who went into the woods and never came out.
All right, folks, that is going to wrap us up for this evening. If you enjoyed this deep dive into 411 cases, let us know in the comments as well as anything else you want us to cover. As always, a huge shout out to our paid supporters of the show: Soylent Cleat, Cleat Feet, Curtis and Laura, Mothman, Laura, Conklin family, and Lou. Your paid support of the show is tremendously helpful. And if you yourself would like to join these amazing people, there's a link below and several tiers to choose from, as well as a link for a one-time donation to the beer fund of the show.
If you're listening to us on YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe, as it really helps us get out there. As always, thank you for entering the abyss.
Until next time.